Natalia Winters stared at her reflection in the bedroom mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed young woman looking back. Just 8 weeks ago, she had been a carefree college senior, sketching architectural designs in her favorite coffee shop, planning gallery visits with friends, dreaming about her future career in interior design. Life had been beautiful, full of possibility. Her parents had supported every creative impulse, every wild idea. Their modest home had been filled with laughter, art supplies scattered across every surface, and unconditional love. Then came the phone call that destroyed everything. A rainy Tuesday evening, a drunk driver running a red light. Her parents never made it home from their anniversary dinner. The grief was suffocating, a physical weight crushing her chest every morning when she woke up and remembered they were gone. But the nightmare didn't end with their deaths. The funeral was barely over when the letters started arriving. Collection notices, debt statements, legal documents she couldn't understand. Her father had made bad investments trying to secure their future. Medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment 3 years earlier had never been fully paid. The family home, the place where every wall held a cherished memory, had a second mortgage she never knew existed. Within weeks, everything was gone. The house was sold to pay creditors. The furniture, her mother's paintings, her father's book collection, all auctioned off. Natalia was left with 2 suitcases of clothes and nowhere to go. That was when Aunt Patricia and Uncle Richard appeared, distant relatives she had met perhaps twice in her entire life. They offered her a room in their sprawling suburban house, and with no other options, Natalia accepted. She quickly learned that their kindness came with conditions. She was expected to cook, clean, run errands, basically serve as unpaid household help, while they reminded her constantly how grateful she should be. Uncle Richard made it clear she was draining their resources. Aunt Patricia complained about the burden of feeding an extra mouth. Every day felt like walking on broken glass, trying not to give them another reason to resent her presence. 3 months into this miserable existence, Natalia overheard a conversation that made her blood turn to ice. She had been coming downstairs to get water when she heard Uncle Richard's voice from his office, the door slightly ajar. "Vincent Ashford has agreed to everything. He will settle our debts completely if we arrange the marriage. The man is worth hundreds of millions. He owns that chain of luxury hotels across 6 states. Aunt Patricia's reply was cold and calculating. Does the girl need to know the details? She has no alternatives anyway. This solves our financial problems permanently. Natalia stood frozen on the stairs, her heart pounding so loud she thought they might hear it. Marriage? They were planning to sell her like property to some stranger? She crept back to her room, mind racing, hoping desperately that she had misunderstood. But the next morning confirmed her worst fears when Uncle Richard summoned her to his office. The conversation was brief and brutal. They had arranged for her to marry Vincent Ashford, a highly successful businessman. The wedding would take place in 2 weeks. The decision was final and not up for discussion. When Natalia protested, when she begged for any other option, Uncle Richard cut her off coldly. "You are 22 years old with no job, no money, no education completed, and no prospects. Many women would consider themselves lucky to marry a wealthy, established man. Be grateful we found someone willing to take responsibility for you." "How old is he?" Natalia whispered, already knowing the answer would be terrible. The pause before Aunt Patricia answered told her everything. "He is 48. Age is irrelevant when a man can provide security and stability. You should focus on that instead of being dramatic." The meeting with Vincent Ashford was arranged at an exclusive steakhouse downtown. Natalia wore a simple navy dress that Aunt Patricia had purchased specifically for the occasion. Her dark blonde hair twisted into a neat bun that made her look older than her years. She felt numb, disconnected from her own body, as if she were watching someone else live this nightmare. The restaurant was all dark wood paneling, leather booths, and hushed conversations among wealthy patrons. They were led to a private dining room where a man sat waiting. Vincent Ashford stood when they entered, and Natalia got her first look at the stranger who had purchased the rights to her life. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was streaked with silver at the temples, giving him a distinguished appearance. His face was handsome in a severe way, all strong angles and sharp features. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a striking pale blue that seemed to see right through her carefully maintained composure. There was something in those eyes, a depth of sadness, that surprised her. "Miss Winters," he said, his voice deep and measured. He extended his hand, and Natalia shook it briefly, noting the firm grip, the expensive watch on his wrist, the subtle scent of cedar and leather cologne. This was a man who commanded boardrooms, who made million-dollar decisions before breakfast, who could buy and sell people like her without thinking twice. Uncle Richard and Aunt Patricia dominated the conversation, discussing wedding logistics, financial arrangements, legal contracts, all while Natalia sat silent, invisible. Finally, Aunt Patricia suggested that perhaps the couple should have a moment alone to become acquainted. Natalia wanted to scream that she didn't want to be alone with the stranger, but what choice did she have? Her relatives left, and suddenly the room felt much smaller. "You look terrified," Vincent said quietly once they were alone. Natalia was startled by his directness. "I am," she admitted, "because what was the point of pretending otherwise? I understand this situation is not what you would have chosen for yourself. I want you to know something, Natalia. I will not hurt you. That is a promise." His voice was gentle, almost kind, which somehow made everything worse. How could she trust promises from a man who had agreed to this transaction? The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur. There were dress fittings, paperwork to sign, documents she barely read before her uncle pushed her to sign them. Nobody asked how she felt. Nobody seemed to care that her hands shook constantly, that she couldn't eat, that she cried herself to sleep every night. The wedding took place on a gray November morning in a small chapel. There were no friends present, only business associates of Vincent and acquaintances of her aunt and uncle. Natalia wore a beautiful ivory gown with delicate beading, but she felt like she was wearing a costume. She walked down the aisle alone, clutching a bouquet of white calla lilies so tightly her knuckles turned white. At the altar, Vincent waited in an impeccable black suit. When their eyes met, she saw that same sadness again, mixed with something else she couldn't identify. The ceremony was mercifully brief. They exchanged traditional vows that felt like lies, slid matching platinum bands onto each other's fingers, and the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Vincent leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, not her lips, which surprised her. The reception was small and awkward. Natalia couldn't eat a single bite of the catered meal. Her stomach was twisted in knots thinking about what would happen when they were finally alone. Later that evening, Vincent drove them to his home in his sleek black Mercedes. The luxury car felt like a cage. Natalia sat in silence, watching the city lights fade as they drove into an exclusive area inside the metropolitan center. When they pulled up to the property, she couldn't help but gasp softly. The estate was massive, a modern architectural masterpiece of glass, steel, and stone, set on landscaped grounds that seemed to stretch forever. Warm lights glowed from inside, making it look like something from a design magazine. "Welcome home," Vincent said quietly, as he opened her car door. Home. The word felt foreign and wrong. Inside, a kind-faced older woman greeted them warmly. "Good evening, Mr. Ashford. Welcome home, Mrs. Ashford." Mrs. Ashford. That was her name now. The woman introduced herself as Dorothy, the head of household staff, and mentioned that Natalia's room was prepared upstairs. Her room, not their room. Natalia was confused, but said nothing, too exhausted and frightened to ask questions. Vincent led her up a sweeping staircase to the second floor. The hallway was elegant, lined with contemporary art and soft lighting. He stopped at a door and opened it, gesturing for her to enter first. The bedroom was breathtaking, spacious and beautifully decorated in soft cream and pale gold tones, with a king-size bed that looked impossibly comfortable, a sitting area by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, fresh flowers on the nightstand, and everything perfect, elegant, expensive. "This is your private space," Vincent said from the doorway. "Everything has been prepared according to your preferences." There are clothes in the closet, everything you might need in the bathroom. If something is missing, just let Dorothy know. Alia turned to face him, confusion written across her features. My space? But we are married now, I thought. She couldn't finish the sentence, her face flushing with embarrassment and fear. Vincent's expression softened in a way she hadn't expected. He took a small step into the room, but maintained a respectful distance. Natalia, I know what you are thinking. I know what you are afraid of. Nothing will happen tonight that you do not want. I'm not going to force myself on you. That is not the kind of man I am. She stared at him in complete shock, unable to process his words. But why? Why would you marry me if not to? Because when I looked into your eyes at that restaurant, I saw someone who had lost everything and was drowning in grief and fear. I saw someone who deserved kindness, not more pain. He paused, choosing his words carefully. 5 years ago, I lost my younger brother, Daniel. He was your age when he died in an accident. He believed in helping people, in using privilege to make things better. When your uncle approached me with his proposal, I saw an opportunity to honor Daniel's memory by offering you a way out of a terrible situation. Tears welled up in Natalia's eyes. She had expected demands, expectations, perhaps even cruelty. Instead, this powerful stranger was giving her something she never expected. Choice, respect, space to breathe. I will be in my study if you need anything, Vincent continued. Otherwise, rest well. Tomorrow, we can talk more about how we move forward. This marriage can be whatever you need it to be. He turned to leave, but Natalia found her voice. Vincent. He paused and looked back. Thank you, she whispered, and for the first time in months, she meant it. He gave her a small nod and quietly closed the door behind him. Natalia stood alone in the beautiful bedroom, trying to process what had just happened. She had spent 2 weeks in absolute terror, convinced her wedding night would be the worst experience of her life. Instead, her new husband had walked away and given her the one thing she desperately needed: safety. She slowly changed out of her wedding gown into the soft silk pajamas that had been laid out for her, noting how everything in the closet was exactly her size, her style. Someone had paid attention to details she hadn't even noticed being collected. The bed was incredibly comfortable, the sheets smooth and cool against her skin. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying the day, the gentle kiss on her forehead instead of her lips, the sadness in Vincent's eyes when he mentioned his brother, the unexpected kindness in his voice. None of it matched the image she had built in her mind of a cruel older man who had bought himself a young bride for darker purposes. Who was Vincent Ashford, really? And why had he truly agreed to this arrangement? Around 2 in the morning, Natalia got up and wandered to the window. The view overlooked manicured gardens bathed in moonlight, peaceful and beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. She wrapped her arms around herself and whispered into the darkness. Mom, Dad, if you can hear me, please help me understand what is happening. I am so confused. Somewhere in the house, she could hear faint piano music playing, melancholy and beautiful. Vincent was still awake too, probably unable to sleep just like her. When morning came, Natalia woke to soft sunlight and a note on her nightstand beside a cup of tea that was still warm. Someone had brought it while she slept. The note was written in elegant handwriting. Good morning, Natalia. Take your time getting ready. Breakfast will be waiting whenever you are ready. There is no rush. Vincent. She held the note, surprised by the thoughtfulness, and sipped the tea. It was made exactly how she liked it, with just a touch of honey and lemon. How did he know these small details about her? After showering and dressing in comfortable clothes from the closet, all fitting perfectly, Natalia made her way downstairs. The house looked even more stunning in daylight. All clean lines and natural light, expensive but somehow warm. She followed the smell of fresh coffee and found a bright breakfast room overlooking the gardens. Vincent sat at the table reading the newspaper, dressed casually in dark jeans and a simple gray Henley shirt. He looked younger somehow, more relaxed than she had ever seen him. He stood immediately when she entered. Good morning. Did you sleep at all? He asked with genuine concern. A little. Better than I expected, Natalia admitted honestly. Please. Sit. Dorothy prepared breakfast. She is convinced you are too thin and has made it her personal mission to fix that." There was a hint of warmth in his voice that surprised her. The table was filled with fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, toast, yogurt, everything beautifully presented. They ate in surprisingly comfortable silence for several minutes. "You have questions," Vincent said, setting down his coffee cup. "I can see them in your eyes. Ask me anything you want to know." Talia hesitated, then decided to be brave. "Tell me about your brother. Tell me about Daniel." Vincent's expression shifted, pain and love mixing together. He set his newspaper aside completely and leaned back in his chair. "Daniel was 8 years younger than me. While I was always serious and focused on business, he was full of life and creativity. He played guitar, wrote poetry, believed in making the world better through small acts of kindness." Vincent's voice grew quieter. 5 years ago, he took a boat out on the lake near our family cabin. There was a sudden storm. The boat capsized. By the time rescuers found him, it was too late. He was only 23 years old." Natalia felt tears sting her eyes. "I am so sorry. That must have been devastating." "It destroyed me," Vincent admitted with raw honesty. "I threw myself into work, built hotels and resorts, made more money than I could ever need, but I was empty inside. I was just going through motions, existing, but not living." He met her eyes directly. "When your uncle approached me about this arrangement, my first instinct was to refuse immediately. The whole concept disgusted me. But then he mentioned your situation, that you had lost your parents, and were alone, and being mistreated. Something about your story reminded me of Daniel and his belief in helping people who were suffering. So I agreed, not to buy a wife, but to offer you a way out. I thought perhaps I could give you safety and freedom, a chance to heal and build a life. I did not expect." He paused, seeming uncertain for the first time. "What?" Natalia asked softly. "I did not expect to feel hope again when I first saw you. I did not expect to care so much about making sure you were okay." The honesty in his words made Natalia's chest tight with emotion. "I thought you would be cruel. I thought this marriage would be a prison. I understand why you thought that. But I want you to know something important, Natalia. You are not my property. You are not trapped here. This marriage can be whatever you want it to be. If you want separate lives under the same roof, we can do that. If you want friendship, I would welcome that more than you know. And if someday you want something more." He left the sentence unfinished, hanging in the air between them. "What if I want to leave?" Natalia asked, testing him, needing to know if the freedom was real. Vincent nodded slowly, no hesitation in his response. "Then I will help you. I will make sure you have money, vacation, whatever you need to build your own independent life. I will not keep you prisoner. This door is not locked." Natalia stared at him in amazement. This powerful, wealthy man was giving her genuine choices when no one else had. When everyone else had treated her like a burden or a commodity, he was treating her like a human being with agency and worth. The days that followed were strange, but surprisingly pleasant. Vincent kept his word about everything. He gave Natalia space, but was always kind when they interacted. He showed her around the estate, introduced her to the small staff, who all seemed to genuinely like and respect him, and told her she could do whatever she wanted with her time. There were no demands, no expectations, no pressure. Dorothy, the housekeeper, became an unexpected friend. She was warm and motherly, often sitting with Natalia over afternoon tea and telling her stories about the house and Vincent. "Mr. Ashford is a good man," Dorothy said one afternoon as they sat in the sunroom. "He has been very lonely since Daniel passed. This house has been too quiet for too long. It is nice to see life returning, to hear someone playing the piano again, to see him smile occasionally." Natalia began exploring the estate more boldly. She found an incredible library filled with thousands of books, floor-to-ceiling shelves of every subject imaginable. She discovered a music room with a beautiful grand piano that looked barely used. One afternoon, she sat down and played a song her mother had taught her, letting the music express the grief and confusion she still carried. She did not know Vincent was standing in the doorway listening until the song ended and she heard soft applause. She turned, startled. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. Your mother taught you? Natalia nodded, feeling tears threaten. She said music was the language of the soul, that it could express things words never could. She was right, Vincent said, walking closer. Daniel played guitar. After he died, I could not listen to music for a long time. But hearing you play just now, it felt healing somehow. Like maybe beautiful things can exist even after terrible loss. They stood in the quiet music room, two wounded people beginning to understand each other in ways that went beyond words. That evening, Vincent invited Natalia to have dinner with him, not in the formal dining room, but on the terrace under the early stars. Candles flickered on the table, and the autumn air was cool, but comfortable with heaters nearby. Tell me about your dreams, Vincent said, as they ate. What did you want to do before everything changed? Natalia hesitated, then began talking. She told him about her passion for interior design, her dream of creating beautiful spaces that made people feel happy and safe. She talked about her parents and how much she missed them, how her father would take her to architecture exhibits and her mother would help her sketch room designs for hours. Vincent listened to everything, really listened, asking thoughtful questions and remembering details. You should pursue those dreams, he said, when she finished. There are excellent design schools nearby. I can help arrange enrollment if you want. And I have properties that always need talented design work. You could practice your skills on real projects. You would do that for me? Natalia asked in wonder. Natalia, I want you to be happy and fulfilled. That is all I have ever wanted from this arrangement. Your happiness matters to me. It was such a simple statement, but it made her want to cry. When had anyone last cared about her happiness? As weeks passed, something fundamental shifted between them. Natalia found herself looking forward to their morning breakfasts together, enjoying their evening conversations. She liked hearing about his work, his travels, his perspectives on everything from architecture to philosophy. She discovered he had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh unexpectedly. He was incredibly intelligent, but never made her feel inferior. He was powerful, but never used that power to control or manipulate her. One rainy afternoon, Natalia found Vincent in his study looking at old photographs spread across his desk. When he saw her, he did not hide them. Instead, he showed her pictures of Daniel. His brother had the same striking blue eyes, but a brighter, more open smile. There were photos of them as children, as teenagers, Daniel with his guitar at various ages. He would have liked you, Vincent said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. He always believed in seeing the best in people, in giving second chances. I wish I could have met him, Natalia replied honestly. Me too. I think you two would have been friends. They sat together as the rain fell outside, sharing stories of the people they had lost, finding comfort in mutual understanding. Vincent told her about Daniel's dreams of becoming a music therapist, his volunteer work with children, his infectious optimism. Natalia told him about her parents' love story, how they met at an art gallery, how they supported her every creative impulse. For the first time since her parents died, Natalia felt truly understood by another person, someone who knew what it meant to lose someone irreplaceable. That night, unable to sleep again, Natalia left her room and found Vincent sitting in the library by the fireplace with a book. He looked up when she entered, no surprise or annoyance on his face. Could not sleep either? He asked gently. Natalia shook her head and sat in the chair across from him. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them, creating a cocoon of warmth and safety. It felt right somehow, peaceful in a way she had not experienced since before her parents died. Vincent? She said softly. She had started using his first name a few weeks ago instead of Mr. Ashford, and he had smiled when she did. Yes, thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for being kind when you did not have to be. Thank you for giving me space to breathe and heal. He set his book aside and leaned forward, his expression serious and tender at once. Natalia, you do not have to thank me for basic human decency. You deserve kindness. You have always deserved it, and I am sorry the world has not shown you that recently. She felt tears sting her eyes, the walls she had built around her heart starting to crack. No one has made me feel like I matter since my parents died. Until you, Vincent stood and moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her hand gently, his touch warm and careful. You matter very much. To me, you matter more than anything. Their eyes met, and Natalia felt her heart begin to race. For the first time, she truly looked at him, not as the stranger who had purchased her, not as the older man she had feared, but as Vincent. A man who had his own scars and loneliness. A man who had shown her nothing but respect and care. A man she was starting to care about deeply, maybe even love. The realization hit Natalia like a wave. She was falling in love with Vincent Ashford, and the thought both terrified and exhilarated her. She had fought against it, told herself it was impossible, that it was just gratitude or Stockholm Syndrome, or anything other than genuine feeling. But sitting there in the firelight, with his hand holding hers, looking into those blue eyes that had shown her nothing but kindness, she could not deny the truth anymore. I am not afraid anymore, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Afraid of what? Vincent asked, his thumb unconsciously stroking the back of her hand. Of you, of this marriage, of what I am feeling. Vincent's eyes widened slightly, hope and concern mixing in his expression. What are you feeling, Natalia? She took a shaky breath, gathering courage. I think I am falling in love with you. I did not want to. I tried not to, because it seemed impossible and confusing. But you made it impossible not to care. You have been so patient and kind and understanding. You see me as a person, not a burden or an object. You make me feel safe and valued. And somewhere along the way, everything changed. Vincent closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, they shimmered with emotion. Natalia, I fell in love with you the morning after our wedding. I came to check on you and saw you sleeping, finally peaceful and safe in that room. Something in my chest just broke open. I knew in that moment, I would do anything to protect that peace, to make you smile, to help you heal. I have been terrified of telling you because I did not want to pressure you or make you feel obligated to return feelings you did not have. You love me? Natalia could barely believe the words, even though she had hoped, had started to suspect over the past few weeks. With everything I am, Vincent said simply, honestly. Natalia cupped his face with her hands, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. Then show me, please. Vincent stood slowly, gently pulling her up with him. His hands cradled her face as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Are you absolutely sure? We can wait. There is no rush. I do not want you to feel pressured. I have never been more sure of anything, Natalia said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Vincent kissed her then, softly at first, gentle and questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Natalia melted into him instead, wrapping her arms around his neck, pressing closer. The kiss deepened, filled with months of restrained longing and newfound love. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. I want to do this right. No rushing, no expectations beyond what feels natural to both of us. We have all the time in the world, Natalia agreed, smiling through happy tears. That night marked a true beginning for them, not as strangers bound by contract, but as partners, choosing each other freely. The physical intimacy that developed between them was tender and unhurried, built on trust and genuine affection. Vincent was patient and attentive, making sure Natalia felt safe and cherished every moment. For Natalia, being with him felt nothing like the nightmare she had feared. Instead, it felt like coming home. Like finding the missing piece of herself she had not even known was lost. The relationship between them transformed completely after that night. They were no longer two lonely people coexisting in the same space. They were partners, friends, and lovers, discovering each other more deeply every day. Vincent enrolled Natalia in a prestigious design program at a nearby university, insisting she pursue her dreams. She thrived there, her creativity finally having an outlet after being suppressed for so long. Her professors praised her innovative ideas and natural talent. Vincent was endlessly proud of her work, constantly asking to see her latest projects, offering genuine feedback and encouragement. Natalia, in turn, helped Vincent open up emotionally in ways he had not been able to since Daniel's death. She encouraged him to talk about his brother, to remember the good times instead of only focusing on the loss. She suggested they create a scholarship fund in Daniel's name for students studying music therapy, combining Daniel's passions with Vincent's resources. Vincent loved the idea, and together they launched the Daniel Ashford Memorial Scholarship, helping dozens of students pursue their dreams. Natalia also began redecorating parts of the mansion, making it feel more like a real home instead of a showcase. She added warm colors, comfortable furniture, personal touches that reflected both of their personalities. She filled the music room with plants and natural light, turning it into a space where both of them would spend hours, her playing piano while Vincent worked nearby. The house slowly transformed from a beautiful but cold space into a genuine home filled with warmth, laughter, and love. 6 months after their wedding, on a quiet spring evening, they sat together in the garden they had redesigned together. Natalia was curled up against Vincent's side on a comfortable outdoor sofa, his arm around her shoulders, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you remember our wedding night?" Natalia asked softly. "Every single moment," Vincent replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I was so terrified. I thought my life was over, that I would be trapped in a loveless arrangement forever." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with happiness. "And now I know it was just beginning. You gave me something I never expected to find again after losing my parents." "What is that?" Vincent asked, though his smile suggested he knew the answer. "Home, hope, love, a future worth living. You gave me back my life, Vincent. You gave me the same things, Natalia. You brought light back into my darkness. You reminded me that life can be beautiful again after loss. You made me want to live fully instead of just existing. I love you, Vincent Ashford," Natalia said, meaning it more deeply than she had ever meant anything. "I love you, Natalia Ashford, more than words can ever express." They sat together as the stars began to appear, two hearts that had been broken finding healing in each other. Their story had started with fear and obligation, but it had become something beautiful and real, a testament to the power of patience, kindness, and unexpected love. 1 year after their wedding, the mansion was filled with laughter and music. Natalia stood in the newly renovated East Wing, which she had transformed into a professional design studio. Her first major project was launching the following week, a boutique hotel she had designed from concept to completion, and Vincent had insisted on celebrating with close friends and the staff, who had become like family. The party was intimate and joyful, nothing like the cold, awkward wedding reception a year earlier. As evening fell, Vincent pulled Natalia onto the terrace where they had shared so many meaningful conversations. Soft music played from speakers hidden in the garden, and fairy lights twinkled overhead like stars. He took her in his arms and they swayed together slowly. "Happy anniversary, my love," Vincent murmured against her hair. "Has it really been a year?" Natalia marveled. "Best year of my entire life." "Mine too," Natalia agreed, then smiled up at him mischievously. "Though I have to admit, that first night when you left me alone in that bedroom, I was completely confused. I did not know whether to be relieved or insulted." Vincent laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I was terrified you would think I did not find you attractive. The truth was the opposite. You were so beautiful and vulnerable, and I knew if I stayed in that room, I would want to hold you and comfort you. But you needed space more than anything else. You needed to know you were safe. You gave me exactly what I needed, even when I did not know what that was," Natalia said seriously. "You saw me as a person worth respecting. That changed everything." They kissed under the stars, surrounded by the life they had built together, a life filled with mutual respect, partnership, and deep love. What had started as the most terrifying night of Natalia's life had become the beginning of her greatest joy. Vincent had not taken from her on their wedding night. He had given her something infinitely more valuable: the freedom to choose, the space to heal, the time to fall in love genuinely. And she had chosen him. Every single day since, she chose him, and he chose her right back. Their love story proved that sometimes the most unexpected circumstances can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. That patience and kindness can transform fear into trust. That real love is not about ownership or obligation, but about seeing another person's worth and choosing to honor it every single day. As they held each other close, both of them silently thanked the universe for bringing them together, for turning what could have been a tragedy into the greatest blessing of their lives.